You think this is the first time you've almost quit. It's not. It's just the loudest. There's a version of you, right now, tonight, sitting in a car in a parking lot you don't remember driving to, or lying on a bathroom floor because the bed felt too far away, or staring at a phone full of people you could call and not calling a single one of them, because what would you even say? "I'm fine" is the biggest lie told in America every single day, and you've told it so many times you've started to believe the second half of the sentence is true, even while the first half is collapsing. So let's not do that here. Not for the next 20 minutes. For the next 20 minutes, you don't have to be fine. Here's what nobody tells you about pain at this volume. The kind that doesn't whisper. The kind that grabs you by the collar. It doesn't come with a manual. Nobody hands you a card that says, "This is grief," or "This is burnout," or "This is the moment your 20s stop being fun and start being a referendum on whether you can survive yourself." You just wake up one day and the floor of your life has a crack in it, and you spend months pretending the crack isn't growing, going to work, answering texts with LOL yeah energy, smiling in photos, while underneath the smile there's a structural failure happening in real time. You know this feeling, the specific exhaustion of performing okayness for an audience of coworkers and parents and old friends from high school who still think you're the person you were at 18. The 11 p.m. scroll that you tell yourself is relaxation, but is actually you trying to drown out a thought you don't want to finish. The way certain songs ambush you in the car. The way you've started flinching at your phone when it rings because good news rarely calls. Bad news calls. You've gotten so good at holding it together in public that you've forgotten what it feels like to fall apart in private without immediately starting the cleanup. That's not weakness. That's a person who has been carrying something heavy for so long, they've forgotten there was ever a time they weren't carrying it. I want to tell you about a woman named Elise Mercier. Not her real name, because the man who told me her story asked me to change it. But every detail of what happened to her is true, pieced together from a paramedic who worked the call and a hospital chaplain who sat with her family that night. Elise was 31, an ICU nurse in a hospital outside Phoenix, the kind of person who held strangers' hands while they died, and then drove home and made dinner like nothing happened, because that's what the job demanded. Her husband left during the pandemic, not dramatically, just slowly, the way people do, fewer texts, shorter calls, until one day he wasn't coming home, and she was signing papers at a kitchen table that used to be theirs, and was now just hers. 18 months later, her father had a stroke. She drove 4 hours every weekend to sit with him in a rehab facility that smelled like bleach and boiled vegetables, watching a man who used to carry her on his shoulders relearn how to hold a spoon. She told the chaplain, much later, that somewhere in that year she stopped feeling things in order. Grief and exhaustion and rage all arrived at once, all the time, like a chord instead of a melody. And she didn't have the bandwidth to process any one of them, because there were always 3 more behind it. The night that mattered most. She was 36 hours into a stretch where she'd worked 2 double shifts back to back. Her father had taken a turn for the worse, and her ex-husband had texted to say he was engaged. 3 separate griefs, no spacing between them, no mercy in the scheduling. She sat in her car in the hospital parking garage. Level 3, she remembered that detail specifically, because she stared at the painted number on the concrete pillar for a long time. And she did not cry. She told the chaplain that was the part that scared her. She didn't cry. She just felt very calm, very clear, and very done. She described it as the quiet that comes right before you stop fighting the current. She put her hand on the car door handle, and then, this is the detail that the paramedic remembered, because it's the kind of detail you don't forget. Her phone buzzed. It was a photo, sent by a patient's daughter she'd cared for 2 weeks earlier. A man who'd coded twice and somehow walked out of that ICU on his own legs. The daughter had texted a photo of her father standing in his backyard, holding his granddaughter, captioned only, "He's walking her down the aisle in October because of you." Elise sat in that garage and looked at a stranger's wedding that hadn't happened yet, made possible by hands that, 2 weeks prior, she had been certain were too tired to save anyone, including herself. She didn't suddenly feel okay. That's not how this works, and I'm not going to lie to you and pretend a text message fixes a collapsing year. What happened was smaller and stranger than healing. She felt, for 1 second, like proof. Proof that her exhausted, breaking, barely holding together hands had still managed to do something that mattered, on a night she couldn't even remember clearly anymore because she'd been operating on fumes. She didn't drive home and become a different person. She drove home and cried for 45 minutes in her kitchen. The first time she'd let herself do that in over a year. And then she called her sister and said 9 words. "I don't think I'm okay, and I'm scared." That phone call is the whole story, not the photo, the phone call. Here is the truth that story is trying to hand you, and I want you to actually sit with it, instead of letting it slide past you like every other quote you've scrolled through today. Pain doesn't mean you're failing at being a person. Pain means you're finally being honest about being one. We have built an entire culture, especially for people your age, around the performance of having it together. Curated feeds, grind set captions, the unspoken competition to look the least affected by your own life. And somewhere in that performance, you started believing that the goal was to never feel the unbearable thing, instead of learning what to do once it arrives. Because it always arrives. Everyone's does. The CEO's does. The influencer's does. Your loudest, most together friends does, usually at 2 a.m., usually alone, usually right after they posted something that made you jealous of a life they were also struggling to survive inside of. Ask yourself something, honestly, not performatively. When was the last time you let someone see you not okay, without immediately following it with, "But I'm fine, don't worry about me"? When was the last time you said the true sentence instead of the acceptable one? You weren't built to carry everything silently. You were built to carry it out loud, to another human being, because that's the only design spec that's ever actually worked for this species. Isolation doesn't make pain smaller. It makes it load-bearing. It becomes the thing your whole structure rests on, and structures that rest on pain eventually buckle. Not because the person was weak, but because no foundation was ever meant to hold that much weight alone. So let's talk about what you actually do with this, starting tonight. Not in some vague, someday future where you've magically become a healed version of yourself. First, tonight, before you sleep, you send one text. Not a vague, "Hey, you up," but the true sentence, "I'm not okay right now, and I don't want to be alone in it." Send it to one person, not everyone. One. The goal isn't an audience. It's a witness. Second, you stop outsourcing your nervous system to your phone. The scrolling isn't soothing you. It's anesthetizing you. And anesthesia isn't the same as healing. You wake up from anesthesia, and the wound is still there, untouched, just numbed for a while. Tonight, put the phone in another room for 30 minutes and sit with whatever shows up. It will be uncomfortable. That discomfort is data, not danger. Third, pick one structural thing in your life that's been quietly bleeding you out. A job, a relationship, a habit, a silence you've been keeping, and write down, just for yourself, what it would look like to address it within 30 days. Not fix it, address it. Open the conversation with it. Elise didn't fix her year that night in the garage. She made one phone call. That's the unit of change that actually exists in real life. Not transformation, just the next true sentence. And here's the part where I need you to lean in, because this is the image I want living in your chest after this video ends. You have been treating your pain like a wildfire, something to contain, suppress, starve of oxygen, something that, if it ever got loose, would burn down everything you've built. But pain isn't a wildfire. Pain is pressure inside a sealed structure that was never built to hold pressure that way. Like a deep-sea creature pulled up too fast, where what kills it isn't the depth, it's the sudden absence of the pressure it adapted to survive in. You weren't built to release nothing. You were built for equalization, for the slow, deliberate release valve of being known by another person. Every time you let it out, to a friend, a sister, a stranger in a comment section who needed to hear it too, you're not weakening the structure. You're equalizing it. That's not collapse. That's the only mechanism that was ever going to let you survive the depth you're currently living at. Say it back to yourself, because I need this to land and not just pass through. The pressure isn't the enemy. The seal is. The pressure isn't the enemy. The seal is. You have spent years sealing yourself shut and calling it strength. And what you actually built was a depth charge with your name on it. Stop sealing. Start equalizing. One person. One true sentence. Tonight. So here's what I'm asking you to do the second this video ends. Don't close the tab and go back to scrolling like nothing happened. Open your messages. Find the one person who has earned the right to hear the true sentence. Send it. Not tomorrow. Tonight, while the courage from these last 20 minutes is still warm in your chest, before your brain talks you back into the seal. And while you're at it, leave a comment below and tell me this. What's the one true sentence you've been too scared to say out loud to anyone? You don't have to use your real name. You just have to use real words. I will read it. Someone else scrolling through these comments at 2 a.m., feeling exactly like you feel right now, will read it too. And for 1 second, neither of you will be as alone as you were 5 minutes ago. If this reached you, subscribe. Not because the algorithm needs it, but because I'm not finished having this conversation with you, and there's more we need to talk about before you're all the way back on your feet. You didn't come this far in your life to drown silently in a parking garage of your own making. You came this far to make the call, so make it, and then go be the person who